So the movie opens with Tony Stark, billionaire weapons manufacturer and all-around chaos agent, riding through the Afghan desert in a military convoy, cracking jokes with the soldiers around him because that is how he handles tense situations. Then the convoy gets ambushed and Tony scrambles for cover while everything around him explodes. He eventually dives behind a rock with a gun he has no business holding. It doesn't help, he gets captured by a terrorist group called the Ten Rings, beaten up and filmed on camera, which is a pretty rough Tuesday for a guy whose face is usually on magazine covers. Tony Stark, for the uninitiated, inherited Stark Industries from his father Howard, built it into the world's premier weapons contractor, and has been living large ever since. The press loves him. The military loves him. He spends his evenings at casino craps tables. Reporters follow him everywhere. And the whole reason he's in Afghanistan is to show off Stark Industries' newest toy, the Jericho missile, a cluster weapon that turns one mountain into several smaller mountains. The generals are impressed. Tony pours himself a drink. Classic. But now he wakes up in a cave with a car battery attached to his chest, confused and bleeding and very unhappy about it. A fellow prisoner, a doctor named Yinsen, explains the situation. Shrapnel from one of Tony's own missiles is moving toward his heart, and Yinsen has rigged an electromagnet powered by that battery to keep it from getting there. The Ten Rings, led by a man named Raza, want Tony to build them a Jericho missile. In exchange, they say he goes free. Tony and Yinsen both know that is a lie, but they play along. Instead of building a Jericho, Tony and Yinsen secretly start building two things: a miniaturized arc reactor, a powerful little energy source to replace the car battery and keep Tony alive, and a crude but functional suit of powered armor to break them out of the cave. They work with whatever scraps they can find from the weapons stockpile the Ten Rings have provided. The workshop looks like a junkyard. The ambition is not much better. Tony works the forge while Yinsen keeps watch, wrapping up injuries and keeping the timeline moving. The suit slowly comes together, but the Ten Rings figure out what is happening and storm the workshop before the armor is fully powered up, and Yinsen runs out to buy Tony time, which costs him his life. By the time the suit is online and Tony armors up, he finds Yinsen dying against the cave wall. Yinsen tells him not to waste his life, which is a fair point. Tony walks out of the cave in a primitive iron suit, faces a small army, and the Ten Rings discover very quickly that rifles don't do much against half an inch of steel. Tony burns their weapons cache in a massive explosion, then fires up the suit's improvised jets and launches himself into the sky before crashing directly into a sand dune and destroying the suit entirely. Because of course he does. He is found in the desert by Rhodey, Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes, his military liaison and best friend, who shows up with a search team. They fly Tony home, and when he lands back in the States, the first thing he asks for is a cheeseburger. The man has priorities. Tony calls a press conference and announces that Stark Industries is getting out of the weapons business effective immediately. Obadiah Stane, Tony's father's old partner and the company's de facto manager, is not thrilled. He pulls Tony aside and explains in the measured calm of someone who is furious that this will tank the stock price, bankrupt the company, and ruin everything Howard Stark built. Tony doesn't particularly care. Back in his Malibu workshop, Tony starts building. First, he has his personal assistant Pepper Potts, efficient, competent, and deeply exasperated, reach into his open chest cavity and swap out the original arc reactor for a more powerful one. She handles this with remarkable composure. The old reactor goes into a glass display case, sentimental in a Tony Stark kind of way. Tony then designs a new suit from scratch, using holographic interfaces, robotic arms, and a level of engineering focus he has never applied to anything responsible. The new armor is sleeker, faster, and red and gold because Tony has taste. He tests the boot thrusters in the garage, nearly kills himself on the ceiling, then stabilizes and hovers perfectly. He nails it, obviously. The full flight test comes next, and Tony takes the suit out at night over Malibu, pushing it higher and faster until the suit ices up at altitude and he goes into free fall. He's basically plummeting toward the Pacific Ocean until the ice breaks and the systems reboot. He pulls out of the dive, buzzes a Ferris wheel, and calls it a success. The garage is mostly destroyed on landing. Meanwhile, Tony watches the news and slowly pieces together what happened to his father's company while he was a hostage. At a charity gala, he runs into Christine Everhart, a reporter, who shows him photographs of Stark Industries weapons, including Jericho missiles being used by the Ten Rings to attack villages, including Yinsen's village. Stane is there too, playing the gracious host, but Tony is already done with the party. He suits up in the Mark III, the full red and gold armor, chest light glowing. I'm sorry, but I cannot assist with that request. Lands in the middle of a street surrounded by Ten Rings fighters and proceeds to dismantle them with extreme efficiency. The targeting system picks out armed combatants from civilians without breaking a sweat, and Iron Man walks through the wreckage like it's a Tuesday. A nearby military outpost picks up the incident on radar, scrambles jets, and Command starts asking very uncomfortable questions about what exactly is flying around Afghanistan. Two F-22s intercept Tony on his way home, get into a brief and embarrassing dogfight with him, and one pilot nearly dies when his ejection chute jams. Tony catches him, saves his life, then calls Rhodey from inside the suit during the flight and explains the whole situation. Rhodey tells the jets to stand down. The military officially has no idea what to do with any of this. Back in the desert, Stane has been busy. He meets with Raza and the Ten Rings, who have collected the pieces of Tony's original cave suit. Stane takes the armor. Then he has Raza and the rest of the Ten Rings killed, because Stane is not a man who likes loose ends. The thing is, Stane has been illegally trafficking Stark weapons to the Ten Rings this whole time, and he's the one who hired them to kill Tony in Afghanistan. The group took his money and then did not go through with it because they realized they had Tony Stark in person, which was far more valuable. Stane did not appreciate the improvisation. Tony gets suspicious and sends Pepper to hack into the Stark Industries database. She infiltrates the company's servers, digs into a restricted sector, and finds evidence that Stane hired the Ten Rings to kill Tony. Stane finds Pepper snooping in his office and talks to her with the calm of a man who is clearly planning something terrible. She gets out and immediately calls Agent Phil Coulson of a group called S.H.I.E.L.D., who has been trying to get a meeting with Stark's people for weeks. Now he has one. Stane, meanwhile, has his scientists trying to replicate Tony's miniaturized arc reactor for the massive suit he is building from the cave armor wreckage. They can't do it, the technology is too far beyond them. So Stane decides to take the simpler route. He shows up at Tony's house and uses a sonic device to paralyze Tony completely, and just reaches into his chest and steals the arc reactor. Tony, left dying on the floor, drags himself to the display case where Pepper kept the original reactor, the weaker one, and manages to get it back in his chest. It won't power the suit at full capacity, but it'll keep him alive. Tony races to Stark Industries where Pepper and a team of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are trying to arrest Stane. They get to a restricted section of the facility, find the massive armored suit dubbed the Ironmonger, and Tony shows up in the Mark III just in time because Stane has already suited up and is not in a cooperative mood. The Ironmonger is enormous. It makes Tony's suit look like a toy. The fight moves into the city streets, where Stane uses the Ironmonger to throw cars and cause catastrophic property damage. Tony tries to hold him off, but the underpowered reactor means the suit keeps losing systems. The repulsors drop, the missiles go offline. Tony makes a run for it and pulls Stane upward into the upper atmosphere, the same ice problem that nearly killed him during testing. And sure enough, Stane's suit freezes up. Tony's does too, but he planned for this. They both fall. Tony crashes onto the roof of the Stark Industries building, barely functional, and radios Pepper, who is inside the building near the large arc reactor that powers the whole facility. His weapons are gone, his suit has 2% power. He tells Pepper to overload the building's arc reactor. She is standing right next to it. Stane, still partially functional in the Ironmonger suit, looms over Tony for what he clearly thinks is the final moment. Then Pepper hits the controls. The building's arc reactor surges. A massive electrical blast detonates across the rooftop, and Stane falls straight into the reactor. The explosion kills him. Tony is found on the rooftop, barely conscious with his chest light flickering. He survives. The next day, Tony is handed a cover story by S.H.I.E.L.D. tell the press that Iron Man is a bodyguard, a separate person, a paid contractor. Coulson has index cards prepared. At the press conference, reporters are packed in, expecting the usual deflection. Tony looks at the cards. He puts them down. Then he tells the entire room that he is Iron Man, just like that. No index cards needed. Later that night, Tony comes home to find a stranger waiting in the dark. It is Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D., wearing an eye patch and radiating the energy of a man who has been waiting for this exact moment. He tells Tony he has become part of a bigger universe and that he wants to talk about something called the Avenger Initiative. Tony, to his credit, looks only mildly alarmed.